We open with a gun in Haley's sights, as we see Audrey with his hands, as he then says, "Bullets are a very rare thing to come across. I can assure you I'm not worth wasting one of those." Haley says, "I'll find another." "Now stay on topic. How many people do you have?" Audrey says, "Well, before I give you a specific number," Haley says, "not a strong start there." Audrey says, "I do have to say that if this number is more or less, then maybe keep that fucking gun of yours there handy there, Mrs. Triggerfinger, because it's probably changed since the last time I've been there." Haley says, "How many, Audrey?" He says, 40. Haley says, "Are they killers? Did they cut your head off at the entrance?" Audrey says, "Not my folks, no. Look, these questions are being returned with very civilized answers, okay? So please put the gun down and trust me for once." Haley says, "Trust is a very loaded word these days, especially by a man who has a chainsaw for an arm. Especially from somebody that used to take orders from James fucking West, okay?" Audrey says, "Take orders?" "Shit orders, but orders." Haley puts the gun down and says, "I'll humor you for now, but going forward on this trip, no more secrets, and I mean none." Audrey says, "Deal." As they split off and Dave says, "Let's move out," as they get back into their vehicles. We see time going by as they drive along. We see a sign that says, "Montana, 100 miles out." After a while, their vehicles run out of gas, as Haley says, "We're out." Dave says, "We ain't stopping now." They have no other choice but to leave their vehicles behind, as we see them start walking, as Haley looks at Lincoln's motorcycle in the back, and she has no other choice but to leave Lincoln's bike behind. We see them walking all together on an open road, as they all look tired and cold, as we see the wind picking up, as we zoom out to see someone is watching them. We see Larson and the last 4 members of Ryan's crew standing on a hill above, as they are watching our group from far, as he says to his men, "I got eyes on them." One of his guys says, "It's your call, Larson." "How do we approach?" Larson says, "Dave, we get him alone. We make it fast, we make it easy. He will not be standing when the sun goes down." We see the wind blowing as we see the whole group walking on the road with nothing but the clothes on their backs. We see a few houses up ahead as Dave says, "You all keep going. Me and Matthew will catch up." They enter a house looking for food as we see Matthew looks through the rooms, as Dave sees the kitchen has been picked clean, as Dave just shakes his head at Matthew, telling him there's no food. Matthew then says, "Dave?" Dave says, "Yeah." Matthew says, "I've been seeing some of these people, the way they've been looking at me. It's really, really nerve-wracking, man. It's like every time I try to talk to one of them, they give me this side eye, like they're gonna slit my throat or something. I gotta tell you, man, I've been sleeping with one eye open these days. If it gets any worse, I honestly might just have to give them what clearly seems they want and split." Dave says, "Hell no, man. With the group in the state that we're in right now, we need as many people as we can get. Besides, if this place is some kind of fuck up, we need you there to help us. Besides, where would you go anyway?" Matthew says, "Back to my cabin. A lonely life is better than no life." Dave laughs and says, "Buddy, you know how far your cabin is by now? I mean, Christ, you can barely smell James's stench from here." Matthew knows he's right, and he says, "Okay. Alright, man, I'll stay. But not because of what you said, okay? Because I genuinely think you're a cool-ass dude, man. And I don't want to leave with a thought of you dying out here." Dave says, "We should get back. The others are going to be waiting." Matthew says, "Deal, friend." As they shake hands and exit the house. We see Audryn goes into the other house. As he enters, we see little footprints leading to the living room. As we see a little girl hunched over a piano, and Audryn slowly walks up to her. It's a deadhead. It lunges towards him. As we see, he shoots it dead and says, "Holy fuck!" Ashley comes running in and says, "You good?" Audryn says, "Yeah, creepy-ass little girl almost jumped me." Ashley says, "Any food in here?" Audryn and her search around as he says, "Not a damn thing." Ashley says, "Alright, it's alright. We'll get back to the main road." We see the group walking the main road as Haley is looking at her hand. As we see, she's having trouble moving her hand at all. As we see, because of James, her hand is pretty wrecked. She sees Dave, Matthew, Ashley, and Audryn getting back to the main road. As we see, Miles says to Haley, "We gotta find shelter, food, and soon. I'm not sure how much further we can keep doing this." Haley looks weak and turns around as she sees the starving kids, and she says, "We'll find something, all right? We just gotta keep walking." We see everyone walking as they come across some cars all parked all over the road. As Sydney pulls out her knife and says, "Let's search these things." We see time going by as they're going through the cars. As we see Ashley looking through one of them, as she checks the back seat and sees a bloody baby seat in the back. As she looks horrified and closes the door. As Miles asks, "You find anything?" Ashley just nods her head and says, "No." Dave walks up to Haley and says, "We need to find shelter, Haley. It's getting bad here." Haley says, I know. She keeps looking at her hand, and Dave says, "Let me take a look at that." Haley says, "It's fine. That bastard. Even in death, he still fucking hurt me. What kind of a sick joke is this?" Dave says, "The kind of sick joke of a world we live in, Mrs. West." We see her hand is still in bad shape as they keep moving, and Sydney says, "Keep moving, guys. I'll catch up." She splits off, and Miles says, "I'll come with." Sydney and Miles are walking through. Miles says, "Rivers are frozen." Sydney says, "Yeah, we really shouldn't have left the mansion." Miles says, "And starved to death?" Sydney says, "We would have found something. I just don't know if this place even has half of what he says it has." "Hey, come take a look at this." They stand over a big canyon as they look out to see a beautiful view of the sky. As Miles says, "What are we looking at?" Sydney says, "Miles, just take a second. Just look. When was the last time you seen something that nice?" Miles says, "A long time." Sydney says, "My parents always told me and Emma that it's the little things that hit the most. I never forgot it." Miles says, "You've been talking about her more lately." Sydney says, "Yeah. For a while it was hard to talk about. Now when I talk about her, it makes me forget all the bad that we are and were going through." As they both look at this view together. We see Sydney and Miles walking back as they then stop and hear a growling sound. As we see a bear in the woods, as Sydney says, "Easy does it. Easy does it." Miles then shoots the bear 2 times and it falls, as Miles then smiles, and Sydney looks freaked out by this and says, "Oh my god, what the hell are you smiling for?" Miles says, "After all that bad luck, we have dinner for the night." As Sydney says, "Wait, do you see that?" They push some trees back as we see an old abandoned trailer park, as Miles says, "What do you know? Maybe things are looking up after all." We see our group walking on the road as they see a big group of deadheads running towards them from down the road, as Haley and the rest all look really weak, as Dave says, "Let's get it done. No backing out now." We see Haley, Dave, Ashley, Audrey, Matthew, and Tegan start killing them, as we see Haley puts a knife into one of their heads, but then we see she doesn't even have the strength to take the knife out of the deadhead's brain. Dave then covers Haley as one tries to bite her, as they then kill the last few together. Sydney and Miles come in and help, as the last few get killed, and then they stand there afterwards, and Haley looks relieved as Miles shows them the bear and says, "Look what we found." Haley and the others all look happy and grateful that they can eat tonight. Sydney says, "And we found something else." Haley says, "What is it?" Later that night, we see they've all settled into the abandoned trailer park, as we see they're all sitting around a big campfire, trying to stay warm. Dave says, "Well, plenty more where that came from." Billy says, "Thanks, Mom." Haley says, "You're welcome, sweetheart. Dig in." Audrey says, "So there, Mrs. West, we've got about 40 miles, give or take, to the ranch. What do you say we hit the road at the crack of dawn?" Haley says, "That sounds fine. Look, we've pushed this far, okay, and I know how tough it's been. We just gotta do a little bit more. Look, I know that we're at our weakest, okay? I'm not denying that. I see all of us. But going through this, suffering out here, we are doing this so that it's the last time that we ever have to do anything like this for the rest of our lives. We'll get there. I know we will." Miles says, "How?" Haley says, "'Cause we're here." She walks away as Ashley says, I'm gonna take one more sweep at the place before we turn in." We see Ashley entering a trailer to stay warm for the night, as she then hears a growling sound behind a door. As she walks up to it with her weapon ready, she opens the door to see a reanimated baby in a crib as it growls at her, as Ashley looks horrified, as she steps back not knowing what to even do. She pulls herself together and she walks back in and puts the baby down. The next day, we hear Haley says, "All right, rise and shine, come on. We leave now. We'll make it there by sundown." Audrey says, "Gonna search around, try to find some water." Matthew says, "I'll come with." Haley says, "All right, just don't take too long." Later on, we see them walking down the road together, as we see Ashley still looks disturbed by what she saw last night. And Dave says, "You okay?" Ashley says, "Yeah, I'm just trying to hold it together. Believing that we're not out here waiting to just die." Dave says, "What happened?" Ashley looks sad and says, "Last night when I was clearing one of the trailers, I found a baby. It had turned, and it was growling at me. I froze, and I couldn't." Dave says, "Did you put it down?" Ashley says, "Yeah." Dave says, "And that's why you're gonna survive. Don't ever doubt yourself, Ashley. I can't afford that. Not now." Dave says, "I'm gonna go try to find some water as well." As we see him split off. We see Dave walking in the desert, as we see the cold winds still picking up. As we see, he sees something in the snow. He removes some of the snow off of it with his boot. As we see, it says Ziltramite on it, as Dave says. Ain't no fucking destination. We then hear a vehicle coming from far as Dave rolls his eyes and turns around to see this Jeep pull up in front of him. As we see Larson and his 4 men come out and stand face to face with Dave, as Larson says, "Dave Miller, we've been watching you for a while." Dave says, "Well, you could have come up and said hello. I don't bite." We see one of them knocks Dave down to the ground as they kick him twice and Dave is down. The guy takes Dave's gun and Larson says, "I see you're not too tough without your smoke there, huh?" Dave has a bloody mouth and says, "Oh, okay. Okay. And what is this about, huh? Because of the guy that led the group who killed my wife?" Right. Not so fucking sorry about that one now, gentlemen. Larson says, "Ryan was a man of honor. Christ, he was honoring a pastor who led a group of good people." Dave says, "Once good people." One of the men says, "I was at my lowest after I escaped my community. When I had nothing, Ryan found me, took me in. That is not the monster that you speak of. You are simply a cold-hearted murderer." Dave says, "Well, then you better put this murderer down then, I suppose." He smiles and Larson says, "Favor granted. Lozang, do me a favor, huh?" One of the guys walks up to him, as we see him say to Dave, "Any final words?" Dave just smirks at him and says, "Yeah, behind you." Matthew and Audryn come in as Matthew shoots 2 of them dead as Dave then knocks the other guy down and stabs him in the head. Meanwhile, Larson tries to draw his gun as we see Audryn comes in with his chainsaw and cuts Larson in half and kills him where he stands. We see blood goes everywhere onto Dave's face as Audryn says to Matthew, "Nice shooting. Bet that's what all the girls used to tell you." Matthew says, "You alright, Dave?" He helps Dave up and says, "Well, didn't find any food," showing he's not even bothered by this anymore. We see they search the Jeep as Dave finds a case of cup noodles, one singular case of cup noodles, as he says, "Well, fellas, this was a big success after all. Let's get back." We see Dave, Matthew, and Audryn get back to the road as everyone is still walking, as Haley sees blood on all 3 of them, and Haley says, "You guys alright?" Dave says, "Fine, just a few deadheads. Found some cup noodles though." Haley says, "Oh, you're lifesavers." Billy says, "Mom, you see this?" The group runs down this hill and sees a lodge, as Haley says, "Good eyes, son." Audryn says, "Damn. Actually, we're closer than we thought. This place is only about 10 miles out from the ranch." Haley says, "Alright, let's hunker down for a bit here. I've got a plan." They all let themselves in as they search the place, as Haley says, "Alright, this is a good place to hold up for the time being." Dave says, "Wait, why? I thought we were going to this blackberry bubbly bullshit." Haley says, "We are, but I don't know what the hell we're walking into." Audryn says, "Well, I can promise that it's a..." Haley just stares at him and he says, "Continue." She says, "Okay, here's the plan. Ashley, Miles, I want you both to keep the kids safe here while I take the others to the ranch. If this is some kind of trick, I want the kids here where we know they're safe and with people I trust." Miles says, "Got it." Ashley says, "Sounds good. And hey, if it is a lie, give him hell." Haley says, "All right. With that being said, let's do this." We see Haley and the crew heading to the rest of the way, as we see the sun starting to go down, as Haley says, "How much further?" Audryn says, "Once we get close, let me do the talking." We then see several people on horseback approaching them, as they point their guns, and the people on horses do too, as Audryn steps in front of them and says, "Whoa, whoa, 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 we come in peace." We see the lead guy says, "Audryn? Well, goddamn, I didn't think you survived." Audryn says, "Same with you, Urban. I thought you'd be dead in a ditch by now." Urban says, "And who are these new people you travel with?" Audryn says, "A group in desperate need. We really could use your help, old friend." As Urban looks at them and says, "They look experienced as hell," Audryn says, "Oh, they are." Urban says, "Experience. I like that. Well, I welcome you all, good travelers. You've come to the right place. Let me be the first to say, welcome to Blackberry Ranch."